Okay, good afternoon and welcome to chapter 29 of The Real Me. Almost towards the end of the book over here. I think there's 34 chapters. Chapter 29 is titled A Woman's Merit. It's mainly written for ladies, Kollel wives, basically. This whole book is meant for people who are learning in Kollel or who espouse the belief that learning in Kollel is the ultimate. Getting a job is b'diavad, is something only if it's necessary, really necessary. We'd rather try to sit and learn as long as we can. So the topic of a woman's merit is very important because, as the author says, starts off the chapter, what if the husband doesn't want to learn? And they married a Kollel guy, they married into the Haredi society, and the husband is having trouble. Maybe he had trouble before marriage, maybe when he got married, it becomes harder. A lot of husbands do struggle with this, to juggle that balance, because when you get married, you have to have a relationship with your wife, and it's all encompassing. She's always around. It's hard to juggle these two things. You want to have a Shana Rishon, especially. You're supposed to spend a lot of time with your wife, and you were a masmid going in. You learned it all the time before your marriage. Now you're married. You have to cool down a little bit. But many women, as he writes, struggle with a difficult problem. Doesn't seem to have a solution. Many are taught in the home and the seminaries that their zechus, their merit, is through their husband's learning. When he goes out to learn and she maintains the home and even works to support them, she has a portion in his learning. They're accepting of this and willing to fulfill their role in their husband's learning, no matter how difficult. It is wonderful, and we are fortunate to be living in such a generation. Fortunate, okay. But the problem arises when not every husband is ready to toe the line. Suddenly he's staying home in the evening, and on Fridays he'd rather help out with the shopping and the setting up. Terrible. Shopping? Send the woman to the store. Setting up for cleaning for Shabbos? The woman should be doing it. He starts going to Seder late at 9:30. He's still sitting with a coffee and the newspaper. I don't know how many newspapers there are in Kollel, but maybe before he gets to the yeshiva at the bus stop, they have you at Ted Naman, but usually people don't have a newspaper in yeshiva. They probably kick you out of yeshiva if you had brought a newspaper into the base medrash. But yeah, might have a coffee. Some base medrash, the firm ones, don't allow you to even have a coffee in the base medrash. So women are stuck over here. They're stuck because they think they've been taught in seminary. They grow up in Beis Yaakov that your husband, the ultimate, is to marry the best learner. You want to get the best, sharpest learning guy. He's going to give you your ticket to Olam Haba, and that's what you want, And now he's slacking off a little bit. Every husband slacks off a little bit when they get married. Hopefully they slack off a lot. But the woman doesn't realize this because she's been taught in seminary that he's supposed to be a masmid even after they get married. Like the Gedolim, like Rav Yashav after the week of Sheva Brachos, he told his wife, he says, I need 1,000 days of being alone. I don't know the exact words that he said, but he said after Sheva Brachos, he told his wife, I need 1,000 days. After 1,000 days, I'm yours. Okay. After 1,000 days. I mean, there's a mitzvah of Shana Rishona. I don't know how he understood that mitzvah. Maybe she could be mokal. She could waive that right if she agreed to this. 1,000 days, he's to himself. So, according to Rav Yashav, Yashav's wife never had a problem with this chapter. But everyone else who's not Rav Yashav, whose husband is a regular person, has a problem. Their wife has a problem with this. The problem is really exacerbated by a Gemara, which goes to the end of the chapter, which is a famous Gemara. The Gemara in Brachos says, Nashim b'mai zachyan. How do women merit? Ostensibly, the Gemara means Olam Haba. How did they get Olam Haba? Ba'akruye b'nayil b'nishta. They sent their children to go to Kriya, to learn Chumash in the shul. Uvasnui gavrayu be'Rabbana, to send their husbands to go learn in yeshiva. V'natran legavrayu ad asmi be'Rabbana, and they wait up late at night for their husbands to come back from yeshiva because they're at a long night seder. They're coming back at 10:30, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock. I've even heard of people come back at night. So they wait up for their husbands, and through that, there's zocha to Olam Haba. But the author is bothered. Not every man is cut out for this. Not even the biggest masmidim, a lot of them will cool off when they get married. And a lot of men aren't cut out to be learning. They have to get jobs. They can't sit and learn, even if they're successful in their parnasa and in their business, but they're not learning most of the time. Maybe they'll be kavei itim. What's a woman to do? Her Olam Haba is tied to the man's learning, and he's not learning. He's kavei itim. He goes to a daf yomi shir. Even if he goes to my daf yomi shir, especially goes to my daf yomi shir, where it's entertaining and it's only for half an hour. She's not getting enough schar. So what to do? What should we tell these ladies over here? So his answer is to tell the ladies that no, of course, right? The best thing in Klal Yisrael is to be learning. Like Gemara in Chulin says in Daf 92a, Amr Shimon Lakish Umazuk Gefenim Shallah. The nation of Klal Yisrael is like grapevines, right? Talmidei Chachamim are like the grapes. The clusters of grapes themselves. The business people are like the zmuras, they're the vines. The leaves are like the regular people, the Amei Aretz, the workers, right? And the empty people are the twigs, whatever it is. So the best part is the learners, right? But it doesn't mean that your husband is any worse than the learners. Obviously, he wasn't cut out to be learning, and you should accept that fact. It's very important to accept the fact that your husband's not cut out to learning. If he feels he can't go to night seder or he has to even leave kollel, if he feels that way, so you have to be a good wife. As he quotes many times, that who's considered a good wife? What's considered an isha kshera? Osa ratzon bayla, like more in the Darim says, right? That a woman should be willing to listen to her husband, even if her husband tells her to hit him over his head. Hit him. Baba Ben Buta's wife hit him over his head, and he was very happy that she listened to him. That's the ultimate reward for a woman, is to listen to her husband and to respect her husband and to do his will, to do what he wants. And he even mentions a very funny example over here. Where is this? It's really very funny, actually. He quotes it, I don't remember exactly where it is here. It's a long chapter. He said and they taught in seminary or something like, what if your husband doesn't want, he wants to read the newspaper? So the advice that the seminary teacher gave him was, you go read the newspaper with him. He's reading the newspaper in the morning. He likes to read the newspaper. One person said actually give him the newspaper. One person says not only you should give him the newspaper, you should go and sit next to him and read the newspaper with him. Because that's what's own Bible. That's what her husband wants to do. He wants to sit and read the newspaper. So you should be part of that. And you shouldn't go against him and start chastising him and telling him, we agreed under the chuppah that you're going to be a masmid, you're going to learn. And look what you're doing over here. You're ruining it. You're ruining my life, ruining my Olam Haba. That'll ruin your marriage, he says, which is true. It'll ruin your marriage. And she'll be disgracing her husband. She's not going to be a good wife. So it's a terrible idea. And so he said, don't do that. And that's what basically idea. Be a good wife. Realize that everyone has their own tafkid. Everyone has their own job in this world. Some are cut out to be learning. Some are not cut out to be learning. Even though if you thought when you married the guy, and he thought maybe also that he was cut out for learning, maybe he was really not cut out for learning. He's doing his tafkid. He's doing his job in this world. Let him do his job. Be a good wife. Support him. Encourage him. Honor him. And most of all, listen to what he wants. And that's to be a good wife, and you'll be zocha. The problem is that the Gemara seems to say otherwise. The Gemara seems to say that you have to send them to the base medrash. He says that Gemara is only talking about certain people, people that can, it's not talking about. Gemara doesn't say such a difference like that. I'd like to suggest a little different shot in the Gemara, and to throw really the Gemara on its head, and to say a shot which is probably the opposite of what you thought the Gemara was telling you, and based on that to explain the role of a wife supporting her husband emotionally, as well as, not financially, emotionally, most of all, to honor him. She has to honor him, she's supposed to listen to him, and to do his will. So, Nashim, how are they zocha? They're zocha by sending their children to the shul to do kriya, Abu Sabanim. You know what that is? Abu Sabanim is a program they have here that on Shabbos the fathers learn with their young sons. They send their kids to yeshiva to learn, their husbands to yeshiva to learn. They stay up late at night waiting for their husbands. The word is zechus. Zechus and chova. The banks in Israel, zechus means a credit, right? They give you a credit, and chova means a debt. Chova means a debit card. A debit is a chova, and a zechus is a credit. Now a credit means you give someone a credit that necessarily they don't really deserve. Zechus we always think is a great thing. I don't think zechus is really a great thing. A lot of times credit is you're doing the wrong thing. You're doing the wrong thing, and you get credit for that, meaning Hashem gives you what you want right now, but He'll pay you back later. So it basically means you're doing the wrong thing over here. And I think it's important to realize that a wife shouldn't be pushing her husband. I'm sorry to say, but seminaries are doing an awful job of telling these women, encouraging these young women that they have to always have their husbands sit and learn. I'm reading the Serial in Mishpacha magazine, which talks about, these honeymooners from Ramat Eshkol. They come for a year or two to learn, and the husband was a very serious learner. The first they were going to Sam's Bagels in Ramat Eshkol and Rehov Paran on Fridays, and then he wanted to learn on Fridays, and the girl was upset, even though she signed up for a big masmid, but she said, Fridays, I want to sit and learn. And every woman is like this. Every woman wants their husbands to spend time with them, to be with them, a lot of the time with them, So, and a woman wants that. It's a basic need. And even though the seminaries, they tell you, no, you most your nefesh, and even though send them to learn, tell them to come home late at night. But I don't think it's the right idea. And people listen to that, whether it's the fault of the seminary or the fault of the girls who listens to this, they're sending their kids. Shabbos is a time for resting, spending time with the family. Don't send your kids to always ubanim. I don't believe in always ubanim. I don't think it's a good idea. I don't think it's a good idea to force, meaning sending your husbands be'rabbanan, talking about, for a long time, for a time period where they can't be learning, right? The Gemara in Chagiga says that Hashem cries on three people. One person he cries, Mishi Shar Lasak b'Torah, but Osek. One of them is called he can't engage in study of Torah, and he's Osek. What does that mean? Shar Lasak b'Torah, right? Sorry, Shar Lasak b'Torah Osek. It's hard for him, and he still does it. And then Shar Lasak b'Torah Osek, but Eino Osek, he cries. We know why he cries. He could be learning, he's not learning. What is Shar Lasak b'Torah Eino Osek? So, the Osek, I'm sorry, the Osek is EF Shar. It's EF Shar. How is the Osek in the Torah? So EF Shar means it just doesn't make any sense. It's not financially possible for him to be learning, and yet he's still going to Kol, and he's putting his family in debt, and he's making it very hard in his family life. So EF Shar Lasa Torah, he's not supposed to be learning, yet he's learning. And wives also support this idea that sending their husbands to the Kol lifestyle oftentimes is not very practical. And they're making a mistake over here. Especially, they encourage their husbands to stay late at night when against the primary nature of a woman is that she wants her husband to be around. Night Seder should be banned. I really think it should be banned. Women want their husbands around at night. The husband should be in the house at night. It's the only time he has really to spend quality time with his wife. And they're waiting up till 12 o'clock, 1 o'clock in the morning. Their wife should come, their husband should come home. They're doing something against their nature. They're doing something, it's not natural. Hashem wants us to conduct ourselves in a natural way. You're being mistreated, or you're even causing yourself to be mistreated because there are basic emotional needs that a wife has for a husband to be around. So this trend that husbands that get married and they slack off a little bit, I think, is a very natural thing, and it should be encouraged, and they should take more time off, especially Shana Rishona. It's a mitzvah to misameach ishto during Shana Rishona. You should be taking off, and I'll tell you personally, on a personal level, this chapter really applies to me very much because when I got married, so listen, when I was younger, in my 20s, maybe in my later 20s, I was a big masmid. I wasn't married, a huge masmid. I would stay up till 12 o'clock, 2 o'clock at night, wake up very early in the morning, learn nonstop, bein hazmanim, bein hastarim. I would always be learning. Eventually, it caught up to me, and I burnt out a little bit, and I was still learning. I was still part of the system. I got married late. I got married at 35 years old to a girl, a Haredi girl. She was brought up Haredi. She was taught always you want a learning guy, and we dated, and I told her that I was learning full time. Maybe I didn't describe it. I was learning all the time, but I was in yeshiva, and I planned to continue to learn after we got married, and that's what I did. After I got married, I stayed in Kolo. I was in Kolo for 2 or 3 years. I was in the Mir yeshiva in Yerushalayim. I traveled every day for like 2 years until COVID hit. But I was doing that. I was living the life. And that's what she wanted. That made her happy. That's what all girls, especially in Israel, are taught, that they want their husband to go learn in Kolo for as long as possible. Maybe even better than getting a job as a Rebbe is to learn in Kolo. That's the ultimate. But, as I started, because of marriage, I had already burnt out a little bit before marriage, and after marriage, I was trying to be mekayim the mitzvah of simachas ishto, to make my wife happy. I was trying to make a good marriage. Besides the mitzvah of simachas ishto, I wanted to have a good marriage. A happy wife is a happy life. You realize that if you don't want to have most of the time of a married man and more time as you have children is going to be spent at home with your wife. You want to have a good relationship with your wife. Just makes sense. I'm the type of person I want to have good relationships with people that I'm close to, because otherwise, to me, the relationship's not valuable, and relationships are valuable with close people to me, and I want to make them as important and as observed and as observed carefully as possible. So, my wife, she, the first couple years, the first year or two of marriage, we did everything the right way. I was going to Kollel. I was coming home at 8 o'clock at night from the mirror, and she was very happy. Eventually, I cooled off a little bit, even more, and nights there I never even went to. But there was a point that she told me, and as I was, becoming more, I would say, materialistic. I was caring more about what I was wearing, my clothes. I was caring more about what types of food I was eating better foods and things like that, getting more materialistic, because that's, when you get married, you focus more on the materialistic side of this world. And, you know, before I reached this stage, the early parts of my marriage, I was a very introverted type of person. I was a very quiet person. So people who meet me now would never believe this, that I used to be a very introverted person, and alongside that was being a very awkward person. I was very awkward socially. I never really had any like real friends, most of my life. Like, I don't think most people really have friends, but I really didn't have too many friends. I was very awkward socially. So, I sort of gravitated towards learning as hard as I could, because academically I could sit for a long time and learn. Eventually, it burns you out after a while. But I was very much introverted and not talking socially to people. And it was awkward, to be around someone who doesn't talk a lot. When you're around someone who doesn't talk a lot and doesn't express their feelings, it's awkward. And especially when you're in a marriage to a woman, it's awkward, And there was one point where I was becoming, just more materialistic. I started opening up. I started talking a lot more. And my wife at one point, she says to me, now I really like you. I was like, wow, you really like me now? I was like, come on in our life. I'm like, okay, well, that means that the first 2 years of our marriage, you really didn't like me. So why did you get married to me? Why did you get married to me? Because I wasn't awkward anymore. I was just, I was focusing more on the materialistic side of the world. I could relate much more to my wife. I was talking more. I was more outgoing. If you know me today, if you're around me today, I'm the most gregarious person and the most fun-loving person in the world. You wouldn't think for a second that I'm introverted. I'm probably the most extroverted person in the world. But at that point, it was a transformation for me, and she liked me. Women like a man who's gonna talk and is gonna be social and is gonna be fun, is gonna be exciting. And I felt bad the first 2 years of marriage. She didn't like me. Why did she marry me if she didn't like me? But the idea is that, I'll say it on camera, is that basically the dating system, at least the Jewish dating system, is like a form of socialism. It's a form of communism, I think. I think, and just in general in the world, it's not just in the frum world. Monogamy is sort of a communist approach to men and women meeting, or men and women interacting. I'm saying monogamy is the answer to the relationship between men and a woman. You can only marry one man. You can only marry one woman. Is basically communist, saying everyone should be the same. There's a reason there's a problem in a shidduch crisis, they call it. And in the regular world, also a crisis, but it's different. It's worded differently. The shidduch crisis is there's so many good girls and only so many few boys. That's the way it should be, because it's much harder to be a good man than to be a man that attracts women. Then there's very few men out there that attract women. Alpha males, sigma males, these things are. Those are really the only two that are really going to attract a lot of women. The other men are not confident. They're not strong personalities. They don't lead. They don't say their mind. They're not assertive. If you don't have that personality, women are not going to be attracted to you. Women are attracted to those few men, those few alpha males, those few sigma males. Sigma males, I think, is a little higher in the socio-sexual categorization, but there's not so many men out there like that, and they attract the woman, and that's just naturally the way it is. And if by eliminating polygamy, those men the women want to marry those men, and they'd rather be married even with other co-wives. Like the Gemara Yevamos and Ksuvos talk about, co-wives. It's prevalent. It's supposed to be prevalent in halacha that a man has more than one wife. So they'd rather 5 women be married to one great man than one than a woman being married to an inferior man, a beta man, a gamma man, or a delta or omega man. These type of men, they don't want to get married to these men, but you have to get married in the firm world. So, you do monogamy and you get married to someone. That's why my wife got married to me, because she wanted to get married. You have to say, like the Gemara says, women will get married to any man. If they can't get married to the best man, they'll get married to someone, and they'll be Zoe Mazana they'll go and commit adultery with another man they're more attracted to. Not saying the firm world they'll commit adultery, but the Gemara says that the Mazana V'tolos Ba'alei, and they'll say the child is from their husband, even though they commit adultery with a stronger man. So basically, part of the system, my wife got married to me. She didn't like me, but she saw in me, I'm a good-looking guy, and I was learning Torah. I wanted to learn in Kollel, so she got married to me. But what's very astounding to me is that she told me afterward, after 2 years, where I was like more chilled out and I was more fun and more exciting, and she wasn't happy that I wasn't learning so much. She wasn't happy about that. She was very unhappy. Very unhappy. My wife, to this day, even though I give 40 shiurim a week, to her, I really don't think it's the same as, she grew up, she was taught her whole life, a guy learning in Kollel, it's better than being a Rebbe, it's better than teaching, better than Rosh Hashiva. Learning in Kollel is the ultimate. Learn Kollel the rest of your life if you can, even though you put your family in debt and poverty, that's the best. But, in a certain sense, she was taught this way. She was, I say brainwashed, she was taught that this is the proper thing. This is the only way. This is the best way. She wanted that. And it upsets her because of what she was taught. But on a natural level, she's emotionally attached to me, and she loves me because I'm the type of person that I'm, not introverted and I'm extroverted, and I'm probably both an alpha and a sigma male. So, that's just the way it is. And, when we say that a woman, he says in this chapter that a woman is supposed to, the ultimate job of a woman is to do its own bialah. She's supposed to do the wishes of her husband. Whatever her husband wants, she should do. When I was dating, many years before I got married to my wife, I was dating a girl seriously and didn't end up getting engaged. And I was very attached to my Rosh Hashiva, Yaakov Friedman, from Israel. I was in America at that point. Whenever he came to America, I would try to hang around him, to learn from him, to learn from what he was doing, what he was saying. I met a girl, and we were going out several times, and she confided in me that she spent in Israel. When she was in Israel, she had spent time at my Rosh Hashiva's house. I asked her, said, what goes on in the house? I was never in my Rosh Hashiva's house, really. Many years later, I was for a little bit, not for much, for like a Shabbos meal or a Pesach Seder, but I asked her, what is it like? She said, the way it is like the Rosh Hashiva, he's the Melech, he's the king. And the wife treats him like a king. I'm like, wow, this is what it's like. This is how a husband and wife should act. The wife should treat her husband like a king. But many years later, I'm thinking about it, and I'm like, it doesn't say, right, it says, Aisha Niknas the Bala, right? That's the first Mishnah in Kedushin. She Niknas the Bala. It doesn't call him a Melech. He's not a king. He's a husband. First, you're a husband. If you're a supreme husband, the best husband ever, then one day you can be a king. But you have to be a husband first. You don't get just treated as a king. You don't go into a marriage, and this is what they teach in seminaries, really. Also, this is, that you treat the husband. The girl she treats the husband like a king. She makes gourmet meals for him. She does fancy things for him. He stays up all night on Shavuot. She makes fancy cakes for him. Treats him like a king. He doesn't do anything. We talked about in the last chapter about shipping in the house. He doesn't do anything in the house. He's the king. He's learning. He's spending his whole life learning Torah. But you don't just get the status of a king for no reason. You have to earn it. You got to earn it naturally. If you want to be treated as a king, you have to earn it naturally. And to ask a woman to say, do whatever your husband wants, respect your husband, right? If the husband is not helping out in the house, he's not helping out financially, he's coming home at 1 o'clock in the evening, he's spending most of his waking hours away from you and not giving you the emotional support that you need, the emotional needs that you need, both in the bedroom and outside of the bedroom. He's not doing these things, which is very prevalent. There's a lot of domestic abuse which goes on in the Haredi society, and not physical abuse. I'm sure there is some, but a lot of it is husbands are so serious about halacha, they're serious about their learning schedules. Women, I know from my wife's family, women are afraid of their husbands. They're afraid even talk to them. They're afraid. They're so serious about halacha, so serious about learning schedules. It's like a king, right? You're afraid of the king. He's going to punish you. And that's a sad situation, because a real marriage, the wife is very comfortable with her husband, really, they're friends. They're not best friends, but they're really supposed to be really comfortable with each other. They're supposed to be companions. We talked about in the last chapter. So a woman is not gonna, and she's gonna honor him because she's afraid of him. That's not what the Gemara meant. The Gemara meant she's gonna honor you because you earn her honor, because you're an exciting person, because you're a fun person, you're a relatable person, someone she can confide in, someone she can talk to, laugh with, have a good time, not good night out with, go out to dinner, enjoy yourselves, go on a vacation, enjoy yourselves. If you're not the type of husband where you go out to dinner, enjoy yourselves, it's a boring event, or you go on vacation, it's a boring event, or you spend time together, it's a boring event, and you're a boring person. There are a lot of people like that, but I'm sorry, the woman shouldn't be forced to do something against her nature. She'll honor you, she'll respect you if she can enjoy you, she can appreciate you. She appreciates you as a real man, as someone who can give her enjoyment, give her sipuk, like it says in the ksuba, both, in the bedroom and outside the bedroom. Both things are very important, especially inside the bedroom, but even outside the bedroom, these things are very important to a woman. She can relate to you. She likes you. She honestly likes you. The woman actually likes you, right? You can get married. Two people can get married very often, even in the Goyish world, without liking each other, just because you want to settle down, you want to get married, you want to have children, have a family, other reasons. But do you really like each other? More often than not, we don't find that to be the case. Because this communist society, communist world, the free world is communist in terms, at least, in terms of economy, all right? There's more liberal in terms of the free economy, in terms of certain social values. Now, the Democrats and others like them, there's a lot of push towards liberalism. However, when it comes to dating and getting married, there's still this concept of socialism over here, of communism. One man for one woman. A lot of times women marry men they don't even like. So, incels, you know what incels are. Jordan Peterson, the spokesman for the incels. Incels means involuntarily, can't even say this right, involuntarily celibate, meaning they don't have a choice. They can't get a woman because they want a woman. They just can't get it because they're not man enough to get a woman. So a woman will like a man. She'll honor him. She'll do his will if she can naturally respect him. She can respect her man if he's a real man. He can act like a real. It's not easy to be a real man. Very few real men out there, but the Torah is really only asking natural things. A woman's going to honor, do its own bylaw, if he's a husband, bala, if he's a husband. If he acts like a king, right? He comes to the marriage, he's a king, right? Do my will. She's a servant. She's a maidservant. She's not a wife. She's not a wife, and he's not a husband, right? First, you got to be a husband. If you're a husband, she'll be a wife. She'll treat you like a wife. She'll act like a wife. She'll treat you like a husband, and then you'll have a marriage. Otherwise, you'll be melech, you'll be king and servant, and there'll be domestic abuse. And either, she'll be quiet for the rest of her life and get abused domestically, emotionally for the rest of her life. She never gets her wants taken care of, both outside the bedroom and a lot of times, oftentimes inside the bedroom also. Not only that, but sometimes it's the other way where, the wife is more powerful than the man, and she'll just chastise him and yell at the husband and degrade him, emotionally, and say, you're nothing, you're nothing. And then the man becomes shriveled up, and the man, he's not a king. He becomes, she takes all his self-worth and all his self-confidence out of him. There's a lot of women that do that. The stronger women who will speak up. Some won't speak up and they'll get abused. Some will speak up and they'll abuse their husbands, verbally. A lot of times verbally. So that happens, and neither of those relationships is very good. So really, they shouldn't be taught in seminary. These girls that you have to have your husband go learn it in kollel. And for many years, we spoke other times about the problems with sitting in kollel for so long because of the finances and the debt it brings to your family. But also just the relationship with your wife, it just ruins the relationship. Women should not be telling their husbands it's okay to come back at 1 o'clock. No, tell him he can't go to night sitting. No night sitting. No Fridays, right? Tell him no Fridays. You got to be with me. You got to stay time, not just to help and clean up for Shabbos, to spend time with me. And then you could have a good marriage. Don't make that mistake. The seminaries, I think, are making a big mistake. They're teaching these girls. And the merit of a woman, her zchus, the way she's going to earn Olam Haba, I heard from, in the house of Rosh Yeshiva, Rabbi Yaakov and his wife picks up the phone, And and she says on the phone, they ask her, for shidduchim for her daughters, here the minhag in Eretz Yisrael is to give. You have to, if you want to marry off your daughter to a really good learning guy, you got to give an apartment. They don't have the money to give an apartment. She says, they ask her, can you give an apartment? She says, we're rich, but not in that way. Meaning I share in my husband's schus in Olam Haba. He is a big Rosh Hashiva. He teaches a lot of Talmidim. He learns most of the day, so I get half that schus in Olam Haba. I'm not going to tell you what schlusim you get in Olam Haba. I don't know. All I'm saying is that based on the reality is that most women can't live a life like this. If your husband is not cut out to be learning, you will get Olam Haba another way. There are other ways to get Olam Haba, and Olam Haba has nothing to do with your husband. It can't be, it has nothing to do with your husband. A lot of women don't get married, so what? They don't get Olam Haba because they're not married to men? No, Olam Haba is dependent on your own bechira, your own decision making. You have to make the right decisions in your life. Even if you don't get married, some people are not destined to get married, but it's always up to you. Everyone, whether you're Jewish or even not Jewish, everyone has bechira chafshir. What? It's not fair. You created a non-Jew, so that's it. You lose that Olam Haba. You were born in India. You were born in China. They don't talk about religion anymore. There's Buddhism. You never even heard of Judaism your whole life. And what? You can never get Olam Haba? No, every person, wherever they're created by God, he has Bechira Chavshis. And Bechira Chavshis, right? A lot of the decisions of Bechira Chavshis are governed by the Torah. If you don't know the Torah, at least do the morally sound thing, which makes sense to your conscience, right? You have a conscience. Every person's born with a conscience, right? That's your conscience, is your consciousness. That's you're keeping yourself alive. If you use your consciousness, then you will remain conscious and you will survive the rocky waters of this world, and you'll cross the bridge, Gesher Tzar Ma'od. But if you lose that consciousness, and you lose the conscience, usually they go together, so then you're not going to be on the Gesher Tzar Ma'olam. Sorry about that. But so that's really what it is. Women, even if they're Jewish, not Jewish, doesn't make a difference. Everyone has a bechira. That's the determinant of Olam Haba. It's completely in your hands. It's in no one else's hands. Not in your husband's hands. That's the real answer to this question. It's nothing to do with your husband, your schos Olam Haba. The Gemara is telling you. The Gemara often talks in ways, tricky ways, in ramazim and hints. They think they're zochah for these things. They're not good things. What the Gemara is talking about. You should strive to have a normal relationship with your husband. If you're married, the right decision is to try to have a normal relationship with your husband. Make sure he doesn't learn night today. Make sure he's home on Fridays. Make sure you go out to dinner together. Make sure you go out for vacations together. Make sure he's chilled out. He's not so into his learning, and he can be a normal person. You can enjoy each other's company. We talked about the best type of marriage is enjoying each other's company. When you enjoy each other's company, then you'll have a good marriage. The husband will be a real husband. He'll cause his wife to have fun, to enjoy herself. And the wife will reciprocate and treat him with respect because she's someone that he could respect. She could respect. The woman will respect a man, and she'll love a man who is a real man and who is a fun man and who could give her enjoyment, give her sipuk in life. Hope you enjoyed today's show. My cousin, he called it a show last time. So I always called it a shear, but it is a show. Everything's a show with me. So anyway, hope you enjoyed. See you in the next one.